Complicated? Accrue lets you focus on what is really important. Life. Invest in premium commercial real estate for as low as $1,000 without hassle and worry. Accrue. Making the exclusive inclusive.
Anthony, what a great session. I'm very excited for this P2P reveal. They've been working on this for quite some time now, and it's led up to this moment today. And with me on stage, I have Jessica Walker from Be in Crypto. How's it going, Jessica?
It's going good. Adam, thank you so much for the invite today. The conference agenda looks amazing. I'm really excited to see what is in store.
And I'm excited for you to take the lead here. Guys, Jessica is wonderful. She's going to be hosting the remaining of the show and guiding us through session by session. And shout out to Be in Crypto for being a dedicated media partner for live streaming this and for sharing it with their community. Jessica, kill it. I'm very excited for this. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much. And speaking of excited, we're going to bring on to our next conference agenda panel for today. So the state of Wyoming has really been making headlines lately. And as you all know, really been positioning itself as a true blockchain leader on the regulatory side of the sector, and also paving the way for how the US will interact with this revolutionary technology. So today we're going to showcase one of the true fighters who's really helping creating the Wyoming blockchain ecosystem. We have Chris Land joining us now in an exclusive fireside chat, accompanied by Julian Sevillano from the Security Token Summit. So enjoy.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are in the world. Thank you very much for the opportunity, Security Token Summit and Draper Goren Holm for this fireside chat with Chris Land. Chris Land is the General Counsel for Senator Cynthia Lummis, the freshman senator from Wyoming. He is the former General Counsel for the Division of Banking of Wyoming, and the architect of probably what most certainly is the very first kind of digital assets regulatory framework, which we're going to talk about in a lot of detail. I'm Julian Sevillano. I'm a managing director at Promontory Financial Group. And I lead our digital assets group, and I've had the privilege of working with Chris Land and team for quite a while now. So maybe we might jump right into it. Chris, your team and Senator Lummis have been strong advocates of Bitcoin for quite a while. Senator Lummis is I think the first senator in history to actually own Bitcoin. And she has founded the Financial Innovation Caucus in the US Senate as well, an initiative to educate members of the US Senate and their staff about Bitcoin specifically, and about other opportunities for cryptocurrency and financial innovation and uses of blockchain. So clearly for your office, Bitcoin and digital assets are kind of a national priority. Can you talk about why that is the case?
Thanks, Julian. And I'll also let everyone know that Senator Lummis was originally going to be doing this panel, but we had a couple of votes called last minute. That has to be our top priority, voting. So I decided to deputize for her. So one of the first things is China is testing their central bank digital currency right now in several cities. A lot of other countries are really serious about central bank digital currencies too. And also kind of the coronavirus pandemic's kind of hastened the adoption of technology in our financial system, because people are nervous or, not so fond of cash, or they at least see the advantages to not using cash now in a way that wasn't present before. So I think a combination of those two things has really kind of enhanced the focus of everyone on fintech and digital assets and security tokens.
And can you talk a little bit about why your office and the senator specifically supported the nomination of Gary Gensler for SEC chair, and what do you think the impact? What kind of impact do you think he'll have on the digital assets industry?
No, that's a great question, Julian. Gary Gensler, has a great deal of experience in the financial markets. first of all, we were quite nervous about his views on ESG, environmental and social governance, and shareholder activism, because that smells a little bit like the politicization of regulation. But at the same time, he is very, very pro innovation. And pro digital assets, pro using blockchain and a distributed ledger for settlement and for tokenization. So that was kind of where we ended up. Was his commitment to innovation is the reason why I think Senator Lummis was so committed to ensuring that he has a good start at the SEC and can hopefully help the U.S. catch up to the global race in fintech that we're seeing now.
Yeah, and Mr. Gensler obviously has a technical background in digital assets, having taught a course in MIT on blockchain. So he's very familiar with the technology. So hopefully he'll be an ally to the industry.
Yeah, very hopeful. Senator Lummis and Gary Gensler, if he's confirmed, will hopefully be working very closely together and interacting a lot, and we'll be engaging in a healthy dialogue between our agencies that's appropriate, and hopefully we can shape a regulatory framework that's both enabling innovation and promoting responsible and safe and sound operations in the market.
Yeah, and there certainly has been a lack of guidance. And how do you think that lack of guidance on digital assets has impacted the development of the digital assets industry?
No, I think it's definitely had a negative impact on the industry. Let's call a spade at this point. I think it's kind of restricted the development of securities and distributed ledger technology probably by several years. That's the SEC has been very happy to engage with industry, but it's typically a one-way conversation where they're collecting information about what they're seeing in the market and not providing anything in return in the form of rulemaking, no action letters, guidance, and that kind of thing. So we need to move from a one-way conversation to a more inclusive conversation where both parties are engaging and sharing information and working together towards a common goal where we can responsibly integrate this technology into the market.
Fantastic, and it couldn't come any time sooner. Obviously, other countries are ahead, and for example, the first Bitcoin ETF was launched in Canada. And we're working on a couple of other projects for ETFs also being launched in Canada. So would be curious about your thoughts about how the U.S. can catch up.
No, as you mentioned, I think you're spot on. I do think other countries are ahead, but I also think the U.S. can definitely catch up. Canada, as you mentioned, just recently approved the first exchange-traded product for Bitcoin, and the European Union's working on a new comprehensive market regulation. And everyone knows about Switzerland too, right? Zug, and Switzerland's integrated digital assets, including security tokens, into kind of every aspect of their financial system. FINMA is a very, very regulator that's focused on innovation, and that's good to hear. And China, of course, sees this as a way to kind of undercut the U.S.'s leadership of the global financial system. They want the banking industry and the finance industry and securities industry and commodities markets to come to China because the U.S. has it now, and we're kind of in a global race with China in a lot of ways. I don't think many people really understand that. Especially my generation, we grew up with Wall Street controlling the global financial system, right? It's not our birthright. Like, it's a privilege we have to earn, and we have to work hard to maintain that privilege for the future. And that means innovating in a responsible manner.
Yeah, Chris, I mean, I couldn't agree more. And honestly, this technology, blockchain technology, in a sense, lowers the barriers to entry so significantly that those competitive advantages can disappear quite quickly. So let's talk a little bit about your state in Wyoming, your home state of Wyoming. In contrast, actually not your home state of Wyoming, but your adopted state in Wyoming has been extremely forward-thinking in developing a sound legal and regulatory foundation for digital assets. There's a lot of attention on Bitcoin now, but this hasn't happened overnight in Wyoming. You've been working on this for quite a while. Now we see other jurisdictions following your lead. For example, my hometown mayor, Francis Suarez of Miami, is making a big deal about using the Wyoming framework to support his own digital assets foundation in the city of Miami. So tell us a little bit, what got all of this started? What got you and a small group of other people in Wyoming thinking, we have to invest a lot of time and energy in building the right framework And can you talk a little bit and share some details on the foundation that's been put in place in Wyoming for digital assets?
Thanks. Yeah, someday a movie might be made about this. Probably a B movie, not a particularly good one, but it is pretty interesting. Wyoming is pretty much the only U.S. jurisdiction that really has a more comprehensive and fully built out legal framework for digital assets. And the reason why that's so important is, when you lend someone your money, you want to be able to get it back, right? Like, you're not going to lend someone your money if you think, you don't have some kind of legal rights against them. So, that's kind of the building block for everything else we've done. Wyoming's legal framework, again, recognizes responsible innovation, and it's a good place that for people that want that legal clarity and want to comply with existing laws. Wyoming's legal framework just provides that kind of nexus between distributed ledger technology and digital assets into existing banking, commodities, and securities laws. As you know, Julian, Wyoming created kind of a new bank, depository institution to serve as a custodian for digital assets. Custody is one of the big issues, as we've heard from some of the other panelists today. Custody is one of the big remaining issues, and it's critical to the approval of an exchange-traded product and all the other fun stuff that everyone wants to do. It's that building block that can't be ignored. Banks, unlike trust companies, there's plenty of trust company custodians out there now, and they're doing good work, but banks have certain exemptions under the Exchange Act and the other securities laws that trust companies just don't have. So it's important to have a bank in this space, Wyoming thinks. Wyoming's also done a lot with providing regulatory clarity around what is custody. We have a utility token law. That's everything that kind of started Wyoming's project in 2017. That was kind of what kicked off all the attention. We even created a DAO, a legal framework to allow DAOs to be incorporated in Wyoming, decentralized autonomous organizations, and lots of other stuff. It started 3.5 years ago, and here we are still working on it. So it's a never-ending project. But Wyoming's trying to diversify its economy right now and get away from the extractive industries and kind of build a financial services industry. South Dakota did it in 1981 with credit card banks and trust companies, and there's no reason why Wyoming can't have a strong, vibrant, healthy financial services industry in Wyoming. It's a beautiful state. Yellowstone and Grand Teton are there. So if you haven't, for those on the panel who haven't been to Wyoming, please Google Grand Teton National Park. You'll see some beautiful photos.
It absolutely is. I've had the benefit of driving across the entire state of Wyoming, so I can attest to that. Yeah. And we've got Kraken and Avanti. I guess we're the two banks that have already been approved as speedies, and there's a very healthy pipeline, I understand, of other applicants, and so we'll be hearing some really interesting news coming soon from Wyoming, I'm sure.
Yeah, and from other people too, hopefully. Hopefully the federal government as well. So, yep.
Yeah, and I guess that brings me to my next question, right? What do you see as the biggest regulatory impediments to the growth of digital assets, specifically digital assets custody and token issuance? Has the recent guidance been helpful?
So again, it all begins and ends with legal clarity. You can't get around as much as people want to. You can't get around things like the Exchange Act and the custody rule. Like, we think the responsible people in the space are looking for a way to comply. They just need a signpost on how to do it, and that's what Wyoming is really focused on. The devil really is in the details. Nerdy regulators like me love examination manuals and policy handbooks. And because, if you think about the hierarchy of law, you have like the Constitution up here, you have statutes below that, you have regulations, but no one ever remembers to think about that fourth level of abstraction below regulations. And that's like the manuals that bureaucrats use to check boxes and determine whether you're complying with the law or not. Those aids, those more practical, owner's manual that people use when bank examiners go in to examine a bank or look at a broker dealer or something like that. So that's one of the cool things Wyoming's done. They do important things like, ensuring people are complying with AML BSA requirements, and, how do you prove exclusive control of a security token? I know the SEC is obsessing about that. Wyoming had just actually completed a 771-page exam manual for bank digital asset activities that covers everything you can think of. So, that's kind of the next step. The SEC hasn't even taken that step. We need to get them there. And hopefully, they're working on their examination manual and documents in the background, but that's kind of the next step, we think, is getting that granular level of detail and providing that legal clarity to the industry.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great point, Chris. And I mean, a lot of people talk about regulation in the digital asset space as a negative. And oftentimes, I always think about it slightly differently in terms of the right level of guidance and guardrails. And if they're given with the right level of prescription, they can actually really enable growth in digital assets in a way that regulatory uncertainty, you're providing more certainty to the market at the end of the day.
Agreed. Yeah, it's really important. We want right-sized regulation, as my friend Albert Faulkner, the banking commissioner in Wyoming, says. We want right-sized regulation that does its job and no more.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that brings me to some of the other regulators that have been issuing guidance on digital assets recently, such as the OCC. National banks can now support digital assets activities. I'm sure you welcomed them to the party last year after Speedies had already been around for about a year or so. And so they can issue they can hold custody, they can manage stablecoin networks. But as of yet, they really haven't issued a lot of guidance on safety and soundness expectations, which leads me to my last point. How do you think traditional banks will approach these new powers?
I think they're going to be, banks are typically very cautious, because it's a heavily regulated industry and they're dealing with, billions or hundreds of billions or trillions of dollars in many cases. So I think we'll see some, cautious adoption. They're waiting on the regulators. I think they want more legal clarity from the regulators before they even dip their toes in. And in many cases, the federal regulators aren't completely up to speed on, the nuance that Wyoming has done already. So, we think we have a good answer in Wyoming right now, but the federal banking regulators and securities and commodities regulators are catching up.
Yeah, and several digital assets firms have also applied for OCC national bank licenses, either de novo licenses or conversions from state trust charters to national trust charters. I think there's even one application which is for a full national bank license as well. How do you think this is going to impact the banking landscape? Will they be competing with national banks? Will they be partnering with them? And what are your thoughts?
Well, I'm not completely convinced we're going to see another OCC charter. It depends a great deal on who's nominated to be the OCC comptroller. That's one of the disadvantages of having a banking regulator that has, someone who is appointed by the president, because they have to be, the president's going to put his person in, whether Democrat or Republican in any administration. They're going to put their person that they want in there and that they trust. Comptroller Brooks is no longer there, and he was responsible for the two charters that were issued largely. And so I think we'll just have to see how that plays out. There's a lot of uncertainty at the OCC at the moment. I don't think existing banks should, fear special purpose charters. We have a very healthy and vibrant banking industry at the moment in the U.S. And, no one should be afraid of competition. These banks are all subject to the same banking regulatory standards as, the large national banks. Just look at the details, and it's not regulatory arbitrage. It's, just wanting to have a level playing field in the market.
Yeah, and so finally, and you alluded to this, that the Fed has been very silent in all of this. Any thoughts on their point of view on banking and payments activities for digital assets?
Yeah, great question. That's the $1 million question, as it were. The Fed has dozens of folks at both the Kansas City Federal Reserve Bank and the Federal Reserve Bank of Boston, and the board of governors here in DC working on innovation, digital assets, faster payments. So they're taking it very seriously, and they're very thoughtful and knowledgeable, and they do a great job. I talk to them a lot. Wyoming's been working with them closely over the last 2 years too. And, we think developed a pretty robust supervisory framework that, kind of fits digital assets into the banking system in a pretty elegant manner and, guards against some of the unique risks that digital assets posed. And, I think I think the Fed's going to be issuing some thoughts on all these issues, in the coming months, and we'll all have to stay tuned. I'll let you know, shortly after I know.
Yeah, I'm waiting. I'm waiting as well. And finally, I'll put you a little bit on the spot here. Wanted to ask you about. I mentioned during the introduction about Senator Lummis's initiative to start the Financial Innovation Caucus of the U.S. Senate, and maybe I might ask you to talk a little bit about, more broadly speaking, what is your office's and Senator Lummis's office's kind of objectives? She's part of the Senate Banking Committee. And so what are your all objectives, as it relates to digital assets? And we know that you're leading voice, and the industry is very much, is very much looking towards your leadership for help in a lot of the things that we've been talking about, right? Crafting and driving responsible and innovative regulation to enable growth for this industry and to provide regulatory certainty.
Thanks, Julian. That's an amazing question. Kind of the same way I mentioned with the regulators, the learning curve for digital assets and distributed ledger technology is very steep. And there's a million things going on in Washington, and before now, there's a lot of factors that played into this, but before now, it wasn't kind of as high a priority as it should have been. That's the primary mission of the Financial Innovation Caucus, is going to be to educate our fellow senators and staff and the other regulators, for that matter, on how you can responsibly integrate security tokens and digital assets into the financial landscape. We're going to be doing a lot of activities at the member level and at the staff level, and we're also going to try to do some more practical hands-on experiences with security tokens and digital assets. The whole GameStop saga that happened a couple months ago has given us an opportunity to talk about how security tokens can, lead to faster settlement in equities markets and, provide more liquidity. So, we're talking about innovation as much as we can, but it's really about just face time, making connections, and educating folks on, trying to provide a balanced perspective and educating folks on why fintech and digital assets and security tokens can both promote financial inclusion and create new markets and help maintain U.S. leadership of the global financial system.
Yeah, that's a great point, Chris. And I focusing on the innovative aspects of blockchain and technology and digital assets that help drive transparency, that help drive efficiency, are really not necessarily what people talk about in the front page of when they think about digital assets. So that level of education is very, very much welcome. And so I want to thank you, Chris, for taking the time and for your leadership in this space, not just at the Senate, thankfully, but in the last 4 years, as you mentioned, in the state of Wyoming as well. We really appreciate it. I'm sure that everybody on this call is very much looking forward to what the future holds in terms of regulatory guidance in the U.S. In order to kind of continue to enable the growth of the security token and digital assets industry as a whole. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Julian. It was great seeing you. And I guess we'll turn it back over to the host.